Now that the gang war has reached its merciful conclusion, it's time for Peter Parker to tie up some loose ends. What'll happen next? Well, let's hop to the pages of Amazing Spider-Man issue number 45 and find out together, shall we? So then, as we start this brand new arc, we're at the Ravencroft Institute, where we're introduced to Nurse Shay, who's an actually nice, upstanding lady who goes out of her way to be kind to all the criminally insane inmates here. Tonight, she's delivering dinner, and it's a who's who of fun D-list villains. We got the hippopotamus, we've got Mr. Hyde, and of course, who could forget Pandemonia? For those who don't remember her, she was a one-off member of White Rabbit's gang, the Menagerie. What makes her crazy? Well, she doesn't want to take off her panda costume, of course, and that's more than enough to get you thrown in prison, apparently. Wow, seriously, how is it that the first 2 pages of this book have more love, care, humor, and attention to detail than basically all of Gang War had applied to it? You know, the longer this series goes on, the longer I think I know exactly what sorts of stories Zeb Wells would rather be writing and the ones he's currently being forced to write by editorial. Now, the final inmate we meet in the asylum is actually quite surprising. Turns out it's none other than Anna Watson, aka Mary Jane's much mentioned but rarely ever seen Aunt Anna. Why the hell is she in Ravencroft, you might be wondering? Well, it seems that she's one of the many people suffering with Krakoa-based mania. What does that mean? Basically nothing if you haven't been keeping up with the X-Men books. Long story short, poor Aunt Anna had Alzheimer's, so Mary Jane took her for some of that life-saving miracle X-Men medicine that they had been handing out to the world. It worked. The only problem is that the newest batch had actually been tainted by X-Men villain Orchis as part of a much bigger, much more sinister plan. Spider-Man, we see, breaks into Ravencroft with a fresh batch of cure for Aunt Anna. Apparently, Peter had actually sworn to Mary Jane that he would go out of his way to try and help her, and oh man, isn't it nice to see Peter tying up loose ends and actually be proactive in helping people. In fact, this gets even better because if you were reading that main X-Men book, you'll know that Spider-Man actually used his scientific know-how to help the mutants with the cure. Oh, all the amazing adventures Spider-Man gets up to when you're not reading the book called Amazing Spider-Man. The cure works and takes on Anna right away. Unfortunately, the implication is that maybe this is also going to cause her Alzheimer's to come back as she instantly gets confused waking up inside an asylum. She figures she must have done something wrong, and despite Spider-Man trying to get her to leave with him, she ultimately decides to stay behind, saying that it's the only responsible thing to do, which obviously that word ends up cutting through Spider-Man like a frickin' knife. Luckily, Peter does have options, and he decides to go to his boss Norman Osborn in hopes that he can use his legion of lawyers to try and help him spring on Anna from Ravencroft. Norman agrees, even admits that it's probably better this way, you know, despite whatever might have been going wrong with her, a criminal escape from justice doesn't really help your case. Also, hey, look at Norman's plate of food. It's filled with a bunch of green stuff. Geez, it's almost like they're trying to foreshadow the Green Goblin's return or something. Now, even though Norman just did Peter a huge solid, Peter says that maybe it's time for him to step back from his job with Oscorp, despite the fact that Norman literally let him get away with murder here and come in whenever he wanted and still draw a paycheck. The subtext here being that Peter is actually a little upset with Norman for not dressing up as the Gold Goblin and helping everyone else during the gang war, and it's true, he didn't. Now, if this actually sounds like an interesting premise for Peter, which might lead to some cool character work and maybe him getting a brand new job, don't worry, they ruined this a few seconds later by just simply circling back to Peter keeping the job he's always had, getting paid the same salary, and just coming in whenever he wanted, which was what he was doing anyway, so what the hell was the point of this conversation? Also, even though Peter is actually really happy and really pleased with all the development and all the growth as a thinking, feeling human being Norman has been doing over the last little bit, we then quickly flash over to see that Dr. Kirk Connors is actually experimenting on the living brain at the behest of Osborn, who is almost certainly broken bad again, or is at the very least on his way to goblining it up all over again. Wah wah. With all that out of the way, Spider-Man once again plans to return to the asylum and meet up with Mary Jane with a new plan of attack to try and get Aunt Anna out, and wouldn't you know it, Mary Jane shows up in her brand new jackpot costume. A whole thing that up until now you could be forgiven for absolutely ignoring because it's only happened in special issues and spin-offs and hasn't actually affected anything in the main Amazing Spider-Man book, nor does it really affect anything in the here or now. I mean, I guess it's nice that Peter thinks it's cool that Mary Jane is out there and being a hero, and he's definitely not being critical about it, but I just kind of feel like he should feel something when he ends up kind of feeling nothing. know? Now, in a very cute twist, by the time that Pete and MJ make it inside, we see that Aunt Anna has actually managed to make friends with a bunch of the other members of the asylum, including Whirlwind and the Human Fly. When Nurse Shay asks if MJ and Pete are together, only for them to get all flustered over the subject, Anna even goes as far as to say, oh yeah, who messed it up this time? Before shockingly actually taking Peter's side in the breakup. I only say it's shocking because I wonder, what the hell did MJ tell her friends and extended family about Paul and her 2 adopted kids who disappeared? I mean, assuming she even had other people in her life outside Anna, who, as we established before, is suffering from dementia. But hey, let's not dwell on that anymore. While Peter is in the asylum, he ends up catching the eye of William Baker, aka Flint Marko, aka the Sandman, and yes, I often forget that Baker is his real name too. In fact, that's kind of the point of this whole meeting. Sandman keeps telling people that his real name is William Baker, but no one believes him, either wanting to call him Sandman or Flint Marko, which again feels like a meta read by Zeb Wells. Peter, in a moment of real kindness, actually reaches out to Baker and tries to offer him some understanding, even saying that maybe he'll try and get the other orderlies to, respond to his name request. After all, William here is completely harmless, right? Well, that is, of course, until Peter accidentally ends up name-dropping Spider-Man, which causes him to freak the hell out and go all Sandman again. Them playing their interaction as something of a split personality disorder. Well, I mean, I guess he is in the right place then. William is, if nothing else, sorry for the outburst and tries to return Peter's kindness by saying that there are other people on the outside who are actively looking for him and Spider-Man. Before we end up hard cutting over to what looks to be a new incarnation of the Sinister Six, which doesn't make any goddamn sense. Is it Doc Ock trying to be a good guy right now? Didn't Craven's clone already work through a lot of his Spider-Man related problems at the end of their last arc? You know what, why do I even bother asking anymore? And so that was Amazing Spider-Man issue number 45, everybody, and if you couldn't tell, this one actually managed to pull off the absolutely miraculous task of being an Amazing Spider-Man story that I actually did not hate. For starters, the art here was really solid. Hats off to Carmen Carnero. I'm not fully aware of a lot of her work, but I would love to see her become a fixture on this book. Lord knows it looks way better than those last couple issues of Gang War, and I'm something of a John Romita Jr. apologist, but man, were those last couple issues really rough. Setting the issue at Ravencroft was actually pretty fun, as it allows Zeb Wells to actually play to his strength, writing about fun, quirky D-list villains. I also enjoyed remembering that Aunt Anna exists, and getting to see Peter and MJ actually work together on something for a greater good felt nice. I mean, a lot of it still suffered from the fact that all the other events of this series continue to hang around it like some sort of anchor, but for the few seconds I was able to forget all that, I actually did have some fun. Don't know how I'm gonna feel about Norman's return to villainy. I mean, we all knew it was bound to happen eventually. Here's hoping Zeb Wells can do the Green Goblin justice. Again, despite all my other problems with this series up until now, he does actually manage to do pretty good with the villains. And I hope we get to see a little bit more of Norman's internal strife and they just don't flip the switch and have him be bad all at once. Overall, I would give this one a 6 out of 10. It's not the worst. Hey there everyone, it's your pal Cape Joel again, and if you're seeing my face right now, that means you watched to the end of the video, and I'll always be grateful for that. Retention helps in this crazy YouTube game, and so does becoming a patron. If you head on down to the description, you can find a link to my Patreon page. Recently just redid all the tiers, a lot of cool stuff offering up there, exclusive commentaries, exclusive polls, behind the scenes concept art for Capes and Quest. That's the brand new D&D show I've started soon. Never been a better time to become a patron. You can become a patron for as little as $1 a month and help the channel grow and, help me continue to deliver content like what you just saw. So I want to thank you all, and I will see you again next time. Bye-bye.